At 5, Grayson, thanks for your time. Last weekend, Baylor came out of it with 3 transfer players. They need all of them and more. What is the next haul, or how many more transfer portal players do you think they'll get that can actually fill a role?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a really interesting time, to be honest with you, because, you kind of look at what they did the first weekend. They brought in 3 guys. They landed a commitment from all 3 of them. And that was, very impressive. They got their priority guys on campus, and they were able to land them and, come away with a very successful weekend. But I think what they're looking at now is they absolutely have to land prospects on the offensive line. That's been a reoccurring theme, and that's been something that I know we've talked about a lot on this segment as well. They have to figure out a way to get that position solved. And I expect them to take at least 2 offensive linemen, maybe even more than that, maybe a third. Probably if they don't land the guys that they really, really want, I could see them taking a third offensive lineman. And then outside of that, they have a couple roster spots. If they take 3, they'll have 1 roster spot remaining. So they kind of have a little bit of flexibility, but in general, the focus has been and will continue to be on the offensive line until they land guys that they feel comfortable with there.
Grayson, I know that they are going to host one offensive lineman from A&M, but have they kicked the tires at all on Bryce Foster?
Yeah, I think that has been one of those where I think they've evaluated him. I'm pretty sure that there has been some sort of contact made, but since he's not visiting currently, I would say that, their focus has mainly been on Colton Thomasson, who's the other A&M offensive lineman you mentioned, who was a 4-star prospect in the 2023 class, hasn't played much so far during his true freshman year. So he kept his red shirt and has 4 years of eligibility remaining. I know the staff is really, really high on him, and I know he's the guy that they absolutely would love to land in the class. But as far as Bryce Foster goes, nothing quite yet, nothing substantial enough to really report on, even though I do think he would be a very nice fit and would be a very good prospect to have at the center position.
How badly do you think the program just needed what they got last weekend with that trio of transfer commits? In terms of, need that for sure, but also just some good vibes, for lack of a better term.
I think that the more you kind of looked at it last weekend, the more you kind of came off the weekend and saw just fans being excited, and you saw fans just kind of thinking, the fans that at least have a little bit of reasonable optimism. I think they felt like that was a really, really encouraging weekend for the program in general, for them to bring in the 3 guys that they wanted more than, anyone else, and for them to bring those guys in and then to land them. I think it is a big deal, and it speaks very highly of the coaching staff and speaks very highly of kind of the vibes that they give off whenever they have guys on campus. So I think, for optimistic fans, I think they were excited. I think for some other fans that are kind of out on, what's happening at Baylor, I don't think it really moves the needle that much for that particular set of fans. But obviously, everyone's different, and everyone has their different take on the coaching staff and, where the Baylor program is at in general.
Grayson, several wide receivers last week out the door. They added a couple at that position in the December, January transfer portal window. Do you think that's a position they have to address in this portal window?
I think that's a position that is kind of one of those where I think the more that you kind of look at it and you say, okay, I think they could add depth at that position. Yes, but I think in general, they have the foundation pretty much set there. When you look at as far as for this particular season, they have, your slot receivers. You have your guys on the outside that can go up and get the football. They have the guys that kind of fit the scheme. Personally, if I was looking at a wide receiver, if I was Baylor, it would probably be someone who is maybe a young project type. Someone who you feel like could contribute this year, but has a bright future for the years to come. Because if you look at their depth chart, it is very loaded to seniors and veteran guys. They don't have a lot of guys with multiple years of eligibility, and that's why the 2025 class is going to really focus on the wide receiver position, and that's why, kind of when you look through the transfer portal, I think they're probably going to look around at guys, but you're going to have one that really pops out because they don't have a lot of room.
Basketball-wise, Jonas Adu chooses to go elsewhere. Baylor hopefully was going to land him, but that's not the case. And so now we have a bunch of coaching staff announcements earlier today that were expected and teased for quite a while. Bill Armstrong, Steve Henson, and then Tweety Carter also gets promoted. Just kind of where's your head at and your thoughts on what you've seen collectively from the basketball news wire over the last few days?
Obviously, missing on Jonas Adu was something that, that's a tough blow. Arkansas did a really good job on their visit, and obviously, the way things are now in NIL and the way things are now in just recruiting in general, to get that last visit does become very important. And Arkansas got that last visit, and they were able to land him, even though he was a pretty heavy Baylor lean coming off of his visit. I think most people would have said he was for sure going to go to Baylor, and Calipari and Arkansas came in and they were able to land him. And that's a good pickup for them. And it is a tough miss for Baylor. But I will say, I think Baylor fans are going to be really excited by kind of just the direction that this program goes in as far as the transfer portal goes. I do think that Baylor is still going to be very, very productive coming off of kind of this transfer portal cycle. And I think the team is going to be in a really, really good position to succeed this upcoming season, even without Adu. I think they're going to make the necessary additions that they need to make. I think they're going to find guys that complement the roster really well. And I do think that they're not done yet as far as the transfer portal goes. They will definitely have some say in changing up their roster a little bit over the next, week, I would say. As far as kind of the staff go, I think it's really cool that Tweety Carter got promoted. I know I posted a tweet about it after John Rothstein reported it. It was pretty cool just to see Baylor fans' reaction and just how excited they are, to see a former Baylor player get that opportunity. So, I think that was kind of the most notable part of it. But I also think you kind of look at the other guys they hired and you're seeing guys that have a lot of experience, whether it's Steve Henson, who was the head coach at UTSA for 8 years, got let go, and Baylor immediately picked him up to be an assistant. That's huge. You look at Bill Armstrong and what he did at Link Academy, and he was with Will Wade at LSU for 7 years as well. There's just a lot of excitement, I think, from these hires, guys who can recruit, guys who can really coach basketball. And I think in general, I'm not going to say that this Baylor program was struggling. Obviously, they weren't. But I do think sometimes, as you kind of look through and see kind of the struggles that they've had over the last couple of years in the NCAA tournament, I don't think it's crazy to think maybe a change, a couple of changes on staff and just mixing things up a little bit. I think you could say that could be refreshing and maybe push them even further in the postseason as things move forward to this year.
As far as Henson, he played at Kansas State. He played his college basketball there, like you mentioned, almost a decade at UTSA. Bill Armstrong has been at Link Academy. You mentioned that as well. Trey Johnson, who's at Texas, I believe, was at Link Academy, among others. Baylor's been able to get players from places like that, whether it's Jacoby Walter or VJ Edgecombe, among others. Is that, you think, the link? I hate to use the word link, but is that also part of that thinking?
I think it definitely is. Jacoby Walter played there. And you mentioned they recruited Trey Johnson, but Jacoby's the only one who played there, then ended up at Baylor from Link Academy. They are recruiting 5-star guard Jasper Johnson, who currently plays at Link Academy as well. It's a really good program, but I do think this is more so about the fact that, Bill Armstrong's a really good coach, first and foremost, but then also, I know this people might have controversies about this, but go look at how LSU recruited with Will Wade. They recruited really, really well. And I do think that Bill Armstrong's going to bring that aspect as well, Smokey. But I do think he's also a really good coach and someone who's going to, I think, have a pretty heavy impact on this team.
I know you said, and thanks for your time today, about they will be fine in the transfer portal. Is that something that you see could be, you said a week. I know Ashley's posted some things too. Do you feel like that they'll get somebody inside replacing Adu if they get another player from the portal? That's what it'll be?
I think they definitely need to get some size on the interior, someone that can help with rebounding, and someone that can also just be, I think whether you would say versatile, but I think the biggest thing is just really good defensively. I think that's a huge thing, and all the guys that they've looked at in the portal have been guys who can really play defense, gritty, hard-nosed type guys that are experienced. And so I expect Baylor to end up with a guy like that in the transfer portal. And, I think definitely within the week, maybe even sooner than that. I think Baylor, again, they're going to continue to recruit the transfer portal. And just because they missed out on Jonas Adu does not mean that they don't have something else, potentially working. I mean, this program is operating at a very, very high level, and I expect them to continue to do so. And I think Baylor fans and anyone who covers Baylor is probably going to be pretty excited by the roster that Scott Drew eventually puts together.
Grayson Grundhoefer with us, 365 Sports recruiting analyst, and also college football. Breaks down a lot of what they do with the program there in men's basketball. Paul,